Yep.
Hey everyone, Brittany Morris with Grow Mortgage over here. I'm here with the amazing Cameron Frank. Cameron, tell us, where do you work? What do you do? How long have you been in the industry?
Yeah, thanks, Brittany. With Yancey Realty, I joined them actually in 2021. I've been in the business since 2018, originally in Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
So I've got about 5 years under my belt so far. Joined real estate, the real estate industry right outside of college.
Nice.
But yeah, enough about me. Kind of what tell the people a little bit about yourself and what you're interested in.
Yeah, so I've been in the industry a little over 2 years, absolutely loving it so far. I'm not actually from Charlotte. I'm from a little bit north of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, tiny town
Okay.
up in the tundra.
What made you move down here?
So I went to college at the University of Richmond, and when I was there, my aunt was living in Charlotte, and I didn't want to go back to my tiny town during the summers or for breaks or anything, so I would come check out what I considered the big city then.
Yeah.
So I loved it, and I worked down here every summer during college, and then after college, I just decided to move down here and stay. My job actually brought me down here, and I've been here since.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
How'd you end up in Charlotte? I know you've been all over the place. You've lived in a
Yep.
couple different cities, so what brought you here?
Yeah. So actually, when I was in Portland, I moved to Chicago. And I'm not a big fan of Chicago at all. Sorry for everyone who
I
loves
love
Chicago.
Chicago.
You might love visiting Chicago. It's different living in there. But to all my friends back in Chicago, again, no hard feelings. It's just
He hates you.
It wasn't the city for me. I've got two big Bernese Mountain Dogs, and
Biggest things I've ever seen.
it just, we needed parks to go to. And so when we were looking at where to move, ironically in the middle of the pandemic, Charlotte was always in the back of my mind because I come from a finance background, and with Charlotte being such a big banking hub, I'm like, okay, well, I could easily find a job doing something,
Yeah.
right? But also there's tons of parks. The weather's nice. Cost of living is great. So it just checked off a lot of the boxes that we were looking
Yeah.
for.
So is the finance background why you got into real estate?
A little bit. It was something that allowed me to mix my analytical brain
Yeah.
with my interpersonal skills.
Yeah.
I was going to continue working for Morgan Stanley, the large
Yep.
investment bank, but didn't want to be behind a computer all day. Like
9
that's
to 5 just wasn't for you? Yeah.
well, no, that's not 9 to 5. That's 100 hours a week
Okay,
type of
just
job.
kidding. 9 to 5
Yeah.
sounds like a cakewalk.
Yeah, it would have been. But you know, those first few years running financial advising and
Yeah.
financial planning for other wealth managers is just, most of it is behind a desk, and
Yeah.
I didn't want that. So got in contact with a friend of a friend of a friend type of situation who
Yeah.
owned their own brokerage, and sat
cool.
down, had a
Yeah.
conversation with him about what it was like to be a realtor. And then just as he was describing the job, it kind of fit exactly
Yeah.
what I wanted to do with my
That
career.
makes sense why you take more of like a holistic financial approach with all your clients that you work with, because you
Yeah.
have that analytical financial background, so you apply that to them and their goals.
Yeah, oftentimes they probably tone me out because I nerd out a little bit about it.
A little bit.
But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not just trying to find them the perfect home.
Yeah.
I want to set them up for a larger picture, find
Yeah.
like a better setup for their financial goals as well, because you know, a home is typically people's largest investment.
Absolutely.
So I want them to secure as good of a deal
Mm-hmm.
as possible, not just get them excited about moving into a brand new home.
Yeah, and I mean, you take this approach with yourself too. I mean, you've bought a duplex now. You're looking for your second home. Like, tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about that.
Yeah, so first home that we purchased here in Charlotte was a duplex back in, what was it, 2020?
It's 2021, 2022? One of the two.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
2022, I believe. And Charlotte doesn't have a whole lot of multifamily
You and far between,
deals.
that's for sure.
So this was one, even during the peak of the whole craze of real estate,
Yep.
that actually made sense financially.
Yeah.
I've got this whole spreadsheet that analyzes deals.
Yeah.
But the easiest path, and this is a topic that will go on a different podcast,
Yeah.
I'm sure. But the easiest path you can get to becoming financially independent.
Yep.
And I'm not there yet, so again, take it with a grain of salt. But
Takes some time, takes some multiple properties.
yeah, the easiest path though is what's called house hacking.
Yeah.
So you purchase a home and you rent out part of that home, whether it's a duplex that makes it easier,
Yep.
or a large single family home and you rent out rooms.
Yep.
Like, that cuts down your monthly expense so much, and
Exactly.
really will accelerate the whole process.
We will definitely need an entire podcast on this one.
Yeah,
'cause
for
I'm sure
sure.
people will want to hear more about that. And all
For
the
sure.
different ways you can house hack.
For sure. But yeah. So definitely exciting stuff that we've been seeing. I guess what I want to ask you too, Brittany, is where are we now?
Yeah.
2023 was, I mean, it is much different,
year,
much different than 2021 and 2022. Looking back, how would you categorize 2023, and where do you see 2024
I
relating
would
into?
still say 2023 was one of the best years to buy a house.
Really?
You had home prices coming down a little bit after the crazy pandemic. Interest rates went up, sure, but you're able to get into a home that's appreciating at a rapid rate in Charlotte. And you're also able to get in a home at a reasonable price and not necessarily overpaying, outbidding people for a house. I know for me, you helped me buy my house in November, and
That's
you
right.
did an absolutely amazing job. Got me the best deal I could have possibly ever asked for. I was actually able to get the seller to pay all of my closing costs and pay for a temporary rate buy down. And that was during a time where people thought the market was unstable. They weren't really know what we were doing. And yet I already have, 30,000 in equity already. And I just closed a couple months ago. So I would definitely say 2023 was still a good year to buy. And 2024 has kicked off with the bang. I mean, I've got 11 under contract and process right now, and it's just the beginning of the year.
Yeah,
Since January.
if you follow Brittany on social media, I swear every single day it's something new that's under contract. I mean,
got another one just went today.
Yeah.
And
And
so
it's
not slowing down.
and normally, okay, this is not normal.
No,
January
not
and
at all.
February are typically slow. People are
slowest times of the
people
year.
are just
Yeah.
getting out of the holiday funk.
Yep.
So why are people now
Yeah.
reaching out to you to get to get approved for a
So
mortgage?
I would definitely say there was that prime time rate around November, December where interest rates started ticking down a little bit. People realized, okay, these are just the house prices now. Like there's nothing we can do about this. Like Charlotte's not going to collapse or anything. Like home values are just going to keep going up. So I think people got used to that new norm, and then they realized, well, I'm paying $2,000, $2,500 in rent already. And when you realize, okay, I could have bought almost $400,000 house for that. Like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Like, I'm just spending all this money and not really getting anything out of it. Sure, it's great. Sure, it's convenient, but
renting, you get a pool and
you get a
maybe
pool, you get all
a
of that,
gym.
you get all of that, but still. But then when you look at it, you're like, okay, I can pay $2,500 a month for my $350,000 house, or whatever the case may be for your scenario, and I'm gaining almost $1,000 in equity a month. Like I'm actually netting
Sure.
income almost each month that I own this home, versus with a rental. Sure, it's cool. You got the perks, you got the pool, you got all of that, but there's so much to do, especially in Charlotte, where you can access that anywhere.
Yeah. Well, explain that for a little bit. What do you mean by you're getting $1,000 in equity every month?
Yeah. So I would say I pooled for every single client that I closed last year. I pooled what equity that they had already gained from closing their house, and on average, it was 10 to 15,000 for that person from the time that they closed.
Like yearly.
Yearly.
Really?
So if you divide that up over the year, even at 10,000, you're at almost $1,000 a month that you're making in equity.
Yeah.
So if you think I'm paying $2,500, but I'm gaining $1,000 in equity every month, I'm really only paying $1,500
Crazy.
a month.
Crazy.
Which is crazy. You're not going to find anywhere even decent to rent for that. Or if you will, you'll be sharing with roommates, things like that.
Yeah.
So it's just, it adds to the additional value of not only is this a long-term investment, but also I'm actually netting positive.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to go down this rabbit hole on another day, but because there is a ton to talk about and dissect what she had just said, but we could talk for a whole hour about that.
Easily.
Random question for you. So this Sunday's a big Sunday. It's Super Bowl Sunday.
Sunday.
Yeah.
Yes.
We got
Steelers are out. So sad.
Yeah. They did make the playoffs, I think.
They did.
I think so.
They went downhill from there.
Yeah,
My
I mean,
team was the
but they
Lions.
made it.
They got close.
I'm a sorry Redskins now Commanders fan, so I've got no I got no room to talk. I've got no leg to stand on.
Yeah.
But now that Dan Snyder's gone, maybe one day we'll be good. But yeah, so we got the Swifties on one side, and then we got San Francisco on the other side. How do you see that playing out?
I would say Taylor Swift's boyfriend's gonna come in for the win.
Yeah, maybe he's definitely a dog out there. Yeah, we'll see. I just think it'd be such a cool story. I don't know how much you've been following it,
Yeah.
but San Francisco has Mr. Irrelevant, the last pick in the draft, starting at
I
quarterback.
did see that. That was crazy.
So-
Yeah, I forget who it was, but somebody was like, "Oh, talking about him." I was like, "I don't even know who that is."
Yeah,
But now
yeah.
he's in the Super Bowl, which is so cool.
Yeah. Wait.
Yeah.
So I'm pulling for the 49ers just because how cool of a story would it be that
Awesome.
the last pick in the draft beats Patrick Mahomes, which
Right.
arguably is the
One of
greatest
the best.
quarterback of
Yeah.
all time, in his second year. So
That's super impressive.
I don't know. I think that that's too good of a story to come true.
It
but
might be, but we'll
yeah.
see. It could
Yeah.
be a good. It's going to be a good show regardless.
Yeah.
Show, game.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of is turning into a show with Taylor
Pretty
Swift
much,
now.
yeah.
Now that she's shown half the time, but. So moving on, again, want to kind of recap 2023 and how that bleeds into
Yeah.
2024. You were saying how 2023 kind of the stars aligned to make
Yeah.
it some good opportunities to get
Absolutely.
in. Are the good days over?
No.
In 2024? Or?
No, definitely not. I would say, like, arguably, like, the next year, last year and this year are going to be some of the best times to buy a house, especially in Charlotte.
Yeah.
I think once you get 2025, 2026, people are going to look back on this year and last year like the same they did with COVID. Like, oh, I should have bought my house then. Like, I've got so much more equity now. Like, I think people are going to look back and be like, okay, I missed my opportunity. Like, a lot of times people think during the COVID times when they bought.
But the crash is right around the corner, I hear.
Crash? What crash?
I mean, the economy is just going and falling off a cliff, and everything's doom and gloom. People can't afford these mortgage payments.
Yeah. I mean,
You don't give any credence to that?
I don't know. So I do think there's some stabilization that needs to happen with the market. Of course, it has to happen. We can't keep going at these exponential equity rates forever. But I also think there's so many people and so many people who are in positions to still buy homes that you're not going to have any sort of crash like we did in '08. There are so many more guidelines in place with the underwriting guidelines for just getting approved for a mortgage that it's just not possible for people to default like they did back then. So that we're not going to see a massive real estate crash.
So you don't think we're heading into a recession?
I think a recession's probably inevitable, but I don't think it's going to impact the real estate market like it did in 2008, 2009.
Okay, I wish we could debate there, but just to give you guys some context, so I asked that question, but real estate over the past 30, 40 years has gone up every single time during a recession besides two.
Mm-hmm.
One was the 08, 09 crash. The other one was back in, I think, the late 90s. Other than that, it's still appreciated over
Yep.
the course of recessions, which most people don't think about. They think, okay, if we're in a recession, that means everything comes down.
Everything. It's not the case.
Real estate is usually a safe haven to put your money, which is why it typically goes up over time. Now, does it go up 20, 30% like we saw in 2021 and 2022? Of course not. Which does lead to some concern about like, okay, well, should it come down a little bit? Maybe, but I think at the end of the day, it's the opportunity cost, right? So even if it comes down a couple percent, the opportunity cost is what if it keeps going up even just 3-4%
Every year. I mean, you
exactly
compound that, you're at hundreds of thousands of dollars over 20 years of
right,
home.
right. So even if we go into a recession and in worst case scenario with a city like Charlotte that's growing, worst case scenario, it goes down a few percent is
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But the opportunity cost is so much higher.
Yeah, and do you think like just Charlotte specifically is going to be exempt, or you think like surrounding areas, North South Carolina, or just like the whole real estate in general is going to be fine during this like recession?
Good question. I think Charlotte will be more insulated
Yeah.
than most places around the country. And there's multiple reasons for it. So one, let's dive into the numbers actually. So
Cameron loves this number.
yeah, Charlotte unemployment just came out at 3.3%.
Yeah.
The year before is 3.4%. So unemployment is actually coming down here in Charlotte because so many businesses are coming into the Charlotte area and even right on the border of South Carolina, like your Fort
So
Mill,
close,
Indian Land.
yeah.
A lot of big companies from like New York, California, and Ohio are moving into it.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Taxes. They're getting a ton of tax incentives to
Yeah.
come into these areas
Yeah.
because we're very tax friendly. particularly Charlotte. That's why you
Yeah.
don't see a whole lot of history throughout our town. I feel
Yeah.
like they're tearing down every old building and
just
building a
looks
new.
really gone.
It looks phenomenal in my
Looks so
opinion, but I
good.
know the people who
Yeah.
grew up here are like, oh, I hate it.
Yeah.
I get it,
Yeah.
but I mean the actually, yeah, you can actually kind of
that's a
see
brand new
it.
building right behind you. Yeah.
I think you can see it in the camera. Like
It
it's
looks a little historic.
yeah. I mean, it is. It's a beautiful city.
Yeah.
But again, I'm getting off the rails a little bit. But we're a growing city. So, for example, like places that I would be concerned with are cities that have population outflows. So, again, you're Chicago. Like that would worry me a little bit. New York City for sure.
Yeah.
You've already heard about San Francisco. A bunch of companies are moving out of San
Yep.
Francisco because they just can't keep up with the taxes.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, if half of your income is going into
Taxes,
taxes,
it's a
it's
little hard
tough
to
to
keep
sustain
going,
a
yeah.
business. Yeah. So I lead that to say is that not only do we have the job growth here in
Yeah.
Charlotte, and we're also, I want to say, top 3 in net migration for
Top 3, really?
yeah,
Wow.
for people coming into the city. So we have the population growth, job growth, and we are still, believe it or not, the third cheapest city up and down the East Coast, right behind Philadelphia and Atlanta.
Okay.
Those are the only other 2 cities from a housing standpoint
That
you can get a
makes
cheaper
sense.
house in.
That makes sense.
So when you look at it, like, look at your options. I mean,
Yeah.
yes, you can pick out smaller cities
Sure.
that are cheaper.
Absolutely.
But for cities that are relatively the same size or larger, Charlotte is still pretty affordable.
Yeah.
From the housing perspective. So that's why I'm very confident in housing prices moving forward.
I mean, speaking of housing prices, like what is the current average housing price in Charlotte right now? Like what does that look like?
Yeah. So last year, the median price just closed at $377,000.
Okay.
Versus the average price closed at $461,000.
Okay.
So going into numbers again, which is probably boring you guys to death, but what I'm thinking is because 2023, how I would recap it is it was a year of uncertainty.
Yeah.
Like everyone kind of sat on their hands.
They got a little scared. interest
yeah.
rates going up, kind of just like paused everyone for a little while. Yeah.
That was my experience. They're just always like, now's not the right time for us. We're going to wait for rates to go down.
Sure.
Home prices are high, all valid reasons, but a lot of people just stood on the sideline, which if you follow the stock market in the S&P, it's one of the best years ever in the S&P, because typically when they say there's blood on the streets, there's money to be made.
Yeah.
So you buy when other people are fearful, you sell when other people are greedy.
Yeah.
So we saw a lot of that in 2023. I mean, what was the question again?
I think it was more so along the lines of like, okay, so 2023 people were a little scared. What does that mean
Yeah.
for 2024? Like, what's going to happen? Are more people going to come to the market? I mean, you're experiencing this yourself right now.
Yeah. So good question. So yeah, 2024 is off to a crazy start.
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
saw. I mean, you're experiencing in your business. I started seeing things kind of in the second week of January pick back up, and I am searching for a house myself. And already, I mean, we submitted an offer on one home. They had 10 offers within a couple days.
Yep.
And we didn't get picked, even though we went $30K over list price. We were going to attack another home and spoke with the listing agent about, hey, we're about to submit an offer. Come out a few hours later, she's like, oh, it's under contract.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, thanks for the heads
Yeah.
up. But and that was just on the market for a day, and the other one was just on the market for 2 days. So things are going,
Picking up.
especially from your 450,000 and below
Yep.
price point.
They are fast.
They're moving. Now I remember what I was saying. Sorry. I was talking about how the average price is 461 and there's such a
Versus
big difference,
377.
377. So why the average price was so high is because people were a little bit fearful. And because why that was so high is what you saw is these luxury properties selling, which is going to bump up the average price
much higher.
point.
That
So
makes
it's not
sense.
that you look on the market and your average home is 460,000. No, it's more around 400. You can get an average home
Yeah,
here in Charlotte for
sure.
400, not 460. But that number is skewed because in 2023 we saw a lot of luxury properties hitting the market because people didn't know what was going to happen if that recession was going to
True.
come.
Yeah, and I think with people that were a little scared about interest rates, those luxury buyers are more so the people that have, this might be their second, third house. Like they're not scared of interest rates. It's
Yeah.
actually relatively low compared to when they bought their first one.
Yep.
And they also know a refinance is always an option. And I think what a lot of people don't necessarily understand, they're like, okay, I buy my house, I have this payment for the next 30 years, when 95% of the people, that's never the case.
Don't tell me you're a fan of the slogan "Marry the house, date the rate."
It's my favorite slogan. That's
Terrible.
That's
Why?
one of the biggest reasons that I bought my house.
Okay, I'll let you tackle it first. Why do you think that that's a smart idea?
I personally think that if you find a house that you like and you can afford it, you should jump on it. Because one, that home is going to go up in value, so you're gaining that equity. Two, most people move within 3 to 5 years anyways, so you're not going to be in that payment for 3 to 5 years regardless. Because you're one, either you're going to upgrade, you might get married, you might have a family, you need some more space. We see this all the time. Or at some point rates are going to come back down, which they're projecting by end of the year they are going to drop. So at that point, you're going to refinance. You're already going to be in the house. You know you love the house, and your payment's going to be cheaper. It's a double win for everyone.
Okay. So everything she said was totally valid, but I want you guys to pick up on the get the home if you can afford it aspect.
If you can.
So that's
Yes.
where I think so many people are going wrong with that slogan, and
Yep.
why I was like, oh, wow, you actually believe in that? Because I disagreed
Yeah.
with that slogan 100%, because oftentimes from my conversations, it's when I hear it from buyers or other agents,
Yep.
they're pushing you to buy something that is
Not
outside of
necessarily
your budget,
comfortable. Yeah.
which is not,
No.
I do not recommend. If you can't afford what today's rate, because nobody has a crystal ball, we never know what's going to happen with the interest rate. Yes, many people are forecasting that it's going to go down, but you
But,
don't
yeah.
ultimately know. So if you lock in a rate that you really can't afford for a few years, then don't do it.
No,
I mean, do not
absolutely
do
not.
it. It's not wise.
If it's within what is comfortable for you,
Yeah.
then absolutely. If
For
you're
sure.
pushing to your max budget, I would wait a little bit, or
Yeah.
find something that's more in line with your budget.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess one other thing that I hear about is that foreclosures are skyrocketing too.
No, didn't they just pull release data on that not that long ago about foreclosures and gosh, we got to find that so we can put the stat up.
Yeah. Which actually, are we able to link up
Yeah.
like
Yep.
slides? Okay, cool.
100%.
Well, I will find that article too then, because the last bit of information I heard about it is
Yeah.
that foreclosures were up 40%, which was like the headline. Put it in context,
Yeah, I was
because
going to say, what's the context?
Exactly.
Of it? Where's the catch?
in 2023, we had the lowest foreclosure rates,
In,
maybe even
like-
ever. I don't know.
Yeah,
like seriously, it was
like 50
the
plus,
lowest
if not
ever.
longer years, yeah.
So when you put it in context, even though foreclosures spiked by 40% or whatever, we're still about 100%, or like it wouldn't have to
Yeah.
spike an additional 100% just to get to pre-pandemic levels.
Yeah.
Like
And those are
2019
still
level,
low compared
levels.
to 2008, 2009.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that is what I'm trying to advise people, is that, hey, we have foreclosures are still not a thing, really. You're not getting a better deal on a foreclosure as opposed to another home on the market.
Yeah.
We got a long way to go before foreclosures actually become this huge stir. And then people just remember about 08 to 2011, where you
Yeah.
can scoop up a foreclosure
Probably
at
for next
at-
to nothing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
50 cents on the dollar.
Yeah.
like that. That's
just
not
the
happening
case anymore.
Yeah,
No, not at all.
but wanted to kind of get that. Again, don't read too much into the headlines.
No.
Like take it into a bigger picture, and it'll often make more sense.
That's why it's always so important to talk to people that are in industry, talk to loan officers, talk to real estate agents. We see more hands on the ground what's actually happening than like the news outlets that just throw out a headline. So that's super important as well.
Well, then how do you go about finding the right lender or
Yeah.
realtor?
Yeah. So it's super important. I would always recommend talking to multiple people. Even myself, of course, I would love for you to use me, but there are cases where there might be programs that are perfect for you that I don't necessarily have access to. So it's super, super important to talk to multiple people, figure out what's right for you, what type of program you need, what's going to put you in the best position rather than, oh, I'm just going to go to my bank just because I've banked with them for 20 years. That's not, more times than not, the best case for you.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, for the most part, doesn't every lender have the same program?
For the most part, there are specific programs like those House Charlottes, NACAs, things like that,
Sure.
that are very specific to and that have their own lenders and things like that. But once you get to like a mortgage broker, you have access to so many different programs that we can realistically find you anything that you need or want. But I will say when you go to like a bank or something, they are limited with the programs that they have. They can only offer what the bank actually has. Whereas if you use a mortgage broker, I have access to a dozen different people. So I've got anything from some random jumbo that you've never even heard of to ARM programs to, which I don't recommend ARMs right now, ARM programs to...
Why? If
down
rates are going to go down
assistance.
anyway.
ARMs are actually priced higher right now because of that.
Why would anyone take out an ARM then if it's priced higher?
It depends. There are some great banks that do have some wonderful ARMs, but I've noticed across the broker channel, at least, that ARMs are priced higher than a regular 30-year fixed.
Yeah, that's just not making sense. I don't get that. Like, you're being more risky and paying a higher interest.
I think it's all about investor appetite. I mean, because
Yeah.
when you buy a house, you have a loan. That loan gets sold to the government and to big investors, and it's all about what they want to purchase. So if
Yeah.
they don't want ARMs, they're not
Sure.
gonna pay well on ARMs.
Yeah. And I was reading my notes too because I've been jumping around. So sorry because I've been terribly unprofessional in this entire thing. But going into the projections of 2024,
Yeah.
I was talking about how unemployment, Charlotte went from 3.3 down to 3.2.
Which is
Another advocate for
Yeah.
Charlotte. The national unemployment went from 3.4 in 2022 to 3.5. So it's
Okay, so
increasing.
yeah.
Exactly. So that shows kind of the strength that we have here in Charlotte.
Oh, absolutely.
Again, these numbers are pretty arbitrary if you don't study them, but typically, if we're in a recession, we're going to be above 5%.
Yeah.
And that again, that could happen because unemployment spikes not randomly, but like when it goes up, it typically skyrockets up. But that shows how Charlotte is a stronger market economy, whatever you want to call it, than your average.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
So what do you see as like the potential challenges for somebody looking to buy this year moving forward?
Well, kind of as I've talked about, I mean, the market's picking up. Now that rates have dropped down into the sixes, that's a scary time because like the sixes, how I see it for your interest rate, it unlocks none of the sellers but all of the buyers.
Yep.
Right. So that's why again, home prices can really go out of control, and that we're seeing multiple offers already in January and February. That's concerning because typically for real estate, spring and summer markets are
Yeah.
the hottest,
Yeah.
meaning like they're the most activity is done in the spring and summer. But we're already seeing things running.
So what do you see come spring, summertime then?
So going to what the Fed is saying, they're pulling back. Initially they were talking about having an interest rate come March 31st at that meeting. Now it's being pushed back to May 1st.
Yep.
Because what they're seeing is that, hey, the economy is strong and the appetite is still there.
Yeah.
So that's why they're kind of pushing it back and keeping the interest rates the whole term higher for longer, because there's a ton of people still thirsty to spend money, even that money that they don't have because credit card debt is
All-time
kind of
high.
crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think spring and summertime, if you are looking to purchase, is going to be bad. I mean, it's going to be bad.
competitive,
Yeah.
so definitely patience is needed.
Yeah. If they drop that rate May 1st, you're going to see the S&P go up. We're going to be closer to election time. So
Yeah.
theories about that.
So I want to touch on what you said
yeah,
about,
sure.
about the Fed dropping interest rates. So when the Fed cuts rates, it's not necessarily mortgage rates. So a lot of times people will see in the media like, oh, Fed's cutting rates, and they're like, why did the mortgage rates not dropped? So those do not tie together. So interest rates as far as mortgage side are actually followed the 10-year treasury note,
Okay.
which are not tied to what the Fed does. Those are two separate things. So definitely want to make sure when you see the headlines, Fed cuts rates, doesn't necessarily mean interest rates for mortgages. They are projecting that they're going to go down this year, but they don't necessarily tie hand in hand together to the Fed.
Okay. So where do you think rates are going?
I definitely think they're going to drop. I think they projected 3 times at least this year. I don't think it's going to be 3. I think it's probably going to be closer to 2.
Really?
And I think it's going to be more of a gradual decrease. Like you're not going to go wake up tomorrow and it's going to be a 5.5. Like I think they're going to slowly tick down over the course of the year.
Okay. Well, but if they cut it 2 times, they're just talking about doing like quarter point drops. So wouldn't that make the interest rate still like 6 flat?
So when the Fed makes a quarter cut rate, it's not tied to the interest rates for mortgages at all. So Fed can cut a quarter percent and it has no impact on mortgage rates at all.
Okay.
So mortgage follows that 10-year treasury note. So as that slowly decreases to get back to where it was, I would say even early last year, where we're in the 5s, it's not going to drop overnight.
So you think the 10-year treasury will show, I mean, because, okay, so context, when the 10-year treasury goes down, that's better for the economy.
Indication
that means the economy is doing better.
Yep.
So what you're saying is that the 10-year treasury is going to come down at a increased rate, increase though, even compared to the Fed's baseline rate. So you think that the Fed is going to be more restrictive, even though the economy is going to be looking better. Does that make sense?
Ask that one more time.
Because you're projecting mortgage rates to come down, meaning that you're projecting that the 10-year treasury yield is going to go down.
Yeah.
When the 10-year treasury yield goes down, that means the economy is doing better.
Yes.
But if the Fed is only cutting, let's say, call it 50 basis points, that means they're kind of sitting on the sidelines saying, hey, the 10-year treasury is doing our job. We don't need to cut.
So not necessarily,
because the economy is doing good.
Things. So the Fed is looking at like consumer inflation just like across the board. So we're talking about things like groceries, gas, things like that.
Yeah.
That's what the Fed's trying to control. 10-year treasury is more in line with how interest rates are, and those are almost 2 separate things when you're looking at it.
Okay.
So what the Fed is doing and what interest rates are doing aren't necessarily aligned. I've seen days where Fed has dropped the rates quarter point, interest rates went up. So they aren't aligned, so there's no necessarily correlation to even if and when the 10-year treasury starts going down, if feds are going to be like, okay, then we're good, because they're helping with 2 different things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and again, that's all good. I mean, if we get rates into the 5, but going back into the original question about like buying, like especially buying a home in the spring or summertime, like it's going to be tough. So typically you want to buy like in the winter time, or just when other people aren't so hungry to purchase home, because people buy homes because, you know, school season is changing, the weather's nice, like people are out shopping, those type of reasons. So that's why I'm saying, hey, if you could buy before April time comes around, great idea. Doesn't mean necessarily don't buy in the summertime, because to me, it's all about the deal, or like when the right opportunity comes up, because there will be more options to choose from, at least, because more sellers are going to be selling as well. But yeah, I think bold prediction. I've changed my stance on this, but I think from a year-over-year perspective, we're going to be looking more so about like an 8% appreciation, which is, I mean, if you asked me this even just a couple months ago, I would have said that we were flat for the year, because I didn't think that the economy would still be showing so many signs of strength.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that was a surprise to a lot of people.
Yeah. So I mean, if knowing now that so many people are out and wanting to buy at a 6.5-7% rate still, it's hard to fathom that if rates go down into at 6 flat or high 5s,
yeah,
that we won't see a hefty appreciation.
Yeah.
And again, conspiracy theory about the election and all that, like
that,
how it's
yeah.
manipulated, like that's another thing.
So what would you say is super important for buyers who do want to move this spring, summer? Like, what do they need to do? Like, what do they need to look for in an agent who is going to be aggressive enough to get them and get their offer accepted? Like,
Yeah.
how does that look?
Good question. So don't look for a yes man. Like don't if you're speaking to an agent and they say like, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, that's not recommended. That like you need someone who is doing it routinely and knows the market in and out
Yep.
to be able to be realistic and say, hey, this is where like what the market is doing currently. This is where I have the home priced at.
Yep.
Now, where you go from there is up to you, right? So if the home is priced at 400,000 from an objective view and you spend more because you absolutely got to have it, at the end of the day, you're not going to regret spending 20K more over market value for a home that you love, for like a home that you see yourself for 5-10 years. 20K in the grand scheme of things is nothing.
Yeah.
But also, you gotta speak to people who are just giving you the facts and then and advising you on what they would do in this situation, but not just encouraging you to like, oh, this is the home. And then you look at a home next week. Oh yeah, you should put an offer on this home. Like,
And
don't
I think
do
that's
that.
something that you do so well, because I gave you
Oh,
my
why,
goals.
thank you.
I gave you my goals up front, and then as we were looking, I just got frustrated with the process, mostly because I was busy and I was like, I don't have time to keep looking.
Yeah.
But you told me so many times, you're like, not that house, not that house. Don't take this offer. They're like, that's not what you're looking for. Even though I was like, okay, I'm ready to put in an offer. Like, this is what I want. You're like, no, it's not. And then kept going. And now I absolutely love the house I have. Got a phenomenal deal. So like, you very much push for what is best for them, not necessarily what they think they should do.
Well, because I remember too, because our journey started with looking at like beautiful condos.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, you could spend low threes on a condo that is ready to go. You don't need to maintain it at all, in a nice area. But your monthly mortgage after, because it's a higher interest rate, as you know, you got HOAs, all of that,
HOA fees are crazy sometimes.
and condos don't appreciate as high as single families. So because you knew it wasn't your forever home, it didn't make sense. It made sense to find something that was below market value that worked for your needs and tackle it.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, it was I didn't want to have to do any repairs. I didn't want to have to do lawn maintenance. I didn't have to do any of that. And you very much talked me into being rational and being like, okay, well, you can just hire a lawn person. They're not that expensive. I have a handyman that'll do your repairs for you. So like things that I just didn't want to have to deal with a condo that I would have with the house. Like there was very reasonable and easy things to overcome those objections.
Because why pay $350 a month for a condo HOA when you can hire lawn care for $50 a month?
Exactly.
Like it just to me, it's a no-brainer. Random news. And you guys probably already know if you're living here in Charlotte, but Plaza in October, they announced that they're going to become a social district.
Yes.
Did you hear about that?
Yes, I did hear about that. And I'm kind of sad that I moved out of Plaza right then.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But you're nearby it.
I'm
You're,
so
you're
close.
5-10 minutes away.
Yeah, I've got friends over there too. So
yeah.
it'll be cool.
So I don't know exactly when they just say the spring because it hasn't been opened yet, right?
No, it hasn't been opened yet. And I also don't know the exact streets, but Plaza's perfect for it. Like the way that they have the neighborhood situated and where you have like bars and restaurants, like they already do it for like festivals and things anyways. They shut down the roads anyways. So it'll be super cool to see that.
Yeah, I can't wait. I mean, what's funny too is that they put the time from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. and thinking like, do you really need to be socially drinking at 10 a.m.? I mean, during the weekdays too. It's every single day.
Yeah.
So I thought that was funny that 10 a.m. open container, whatever. Just walking the streets.
Fun for like holidays and things like that. Yeah.
I wonder if they're going to do that in other communities, like Noda especially.
Noda was ideal for that. Even parts of South End are perfect. So yeah, I think they definitely will.
Yeah, that'll be exciting. But I just wanted to bring that up because I looked back on it a couple days ago and I'm like, when is this happening? And there's still no set date, which is too bad.
Which is fun, though. We've come so far from the Brunchville.
The Brunchville?
The Brunchville. Oh, you might not have been here when they passed that. So in...
Brunchville?
The Brunchville, yeah.
Okay.
So in North Carolina on Sundays, you used to not be able to, like, go get brunch or anything and, like, order a mimosa, Bloody Mary, whatever you wanted until noon. So they,
I think I remember.
yeah,
I
so
don't
they
know.
passed the brunch bill, which is now I think it's like 10 a.m. or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we've come a long way from that and our progression with Charlotte.
Huh. Interesting. Um, so I guess another thing is you asked like what are some potential challenges or what
I think you talked
with
about
buyers
the
or-
challenges, but I also, so you talked a bit about like not wanting a yes person for a real estate agent.
Yeah.
But like how important is their experience, what firm they're at? Like what does that play into it when you're looking for an agent?
So I would say firm really has nothing to do with
Okay, good
with
to know.
the agent.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, from my knowledge, or not my knowledge, but just from my experience, it doesn't matter if you're with Joe Blow Real Estate
Sure.
or a big like Keller Williams
Yeah.
working with Keller Williams South Park or Brookshire Hathaway. Like some of these like sound really good, and they have great agents as well. At the end of the day, it's about the agent though. There's
Yeah.
great agents at every single firm.
Absolutely.
A lot of newer agents will actually just fall back on their firm, so they'll say,
yeah.
"Well, my team has done 500
XYZ,
transactions
yeah.
last year."
Okay, well, what have you
Okay,
done?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So experience is extremely important, just because one, I mean, every transaction is different, but
Yeah.
they have to have the experience of overcoming some of these hurdles, because there's bound to be some type of issue that comes up in every transaction, but also experience with negotiating too.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, honestly, even if they're brand new to the industry, if they come from like a strong sales background, that could be as long as you trust them. But if they're like trustworthy for you and they come from a strong sales background, that could be very advantageous as
Absolutely,
well,
yeah.
because a big part of it is negotiation and
Communication. That's so important.
true. So yeah, someone who who has the time for you as
Yes.
well. Because there's also like big teams where you want to work with this rock star agent, but maybe they're
so
on a
busy,
team
yeah.
and they don't have time for
Yeah.
you, so they dish you off on a newer agent who doesn't exactly know what they're doing. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of different things to look at, but I would definitely think about time, experience, skills themselves. And then at the end of the day, who you connect with.
Yeah,
Because this is going to be someone that you're communicating with multiple
24/7.
yeah, I mean multiple times a week. And
Yeah.
if you don't like the person,
Yeah.
then just don't work with them. I mean,
Yeah.
it's gonna annoy you to work with someone who doesn't mesh with your
Mm-hmm.
personality. So sometimes it's just a personality fit as
Yeah.
well.
So what would you say like your niche is? Like I know what I think your niche is, but what do you think it is?
What do you think my niche is?
I think yours is young professionals,
Okay.
late 20s, early 30s, into 40s. People who are, it's either the first time buying or they're looking to upgrade for the first time. And house hack, as we called it earlier.
Okay.
People who don't need a ton of hand holding and are like savvy with the market and up to date. They know what they want. They're going to go for it.
Really?
What? What do you
That's
think yours
interesting
is?
because that's almost the opposite of what my
that's so funny.
what my
Okay.
client demographic is.
Okay.
I do attract some of what you just said just because they
Your
look at
spirit,
me.
yeah.
Well, they look at me and they identify with me
Yeah.
about whether it's age and common interests, things like that. But actually, a lot of my clients are people from out of state looking
Yeah,
for the best school
relocation.
district,
Yeah.
or people who are looking to downsize from their 3,000 square foot home, but now the kids have graduated, so
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
they're looking to downsize into something a little bit more manageable.
Yeah.
I would say, I mean, I would say at least 60% of my buyers are, I mean, like already established,
Yeah.
like in their careers or
opposite of
the exact opposite.
Literally polar
like
opposite of what I
at least 60%, probably 70%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is funny. I mean, yeah, because we've done transactions
so many
together,
together.
so not too many people have been young.
We've got a couple young ones lately.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a couple, but even we're under contract on just one together or two?
Two. We got Tim and Daniel. Those are polar
Okay,
opposites, though.
opposites. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so that would be my niche. I guess. Do you guys have niches in the mortgage business? Or
No, I wouldn't
Yeah.
say so. I mean, there are people that will like specialize in different types of loans. Like we have a whole team that just does like our investor loans.
Oh,
just because
really?
Those guidelines change so rapidly.
Yeah.
It's super hard to keep up to date on those if you're not doing them every day.
Sure.
So we've got that department. We also have a specific like down payment assistance department where we have people that are just doing down payment assistance loans. Not that I can't do all of them; they're just more time consuming. So we like to specialize and just keep the flow going.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. So another kind of pitfall too that I've been noticing, or some opportunities too, is because interest rates have been higher too.
Yeah.
Talk to your agent about seller financing as well. Like tons of opportunity there as long as you can communicate it properly. And then another pitfall that I have on my notes is how they're cracking down on Airbnbs. So because I do work with quite a bit of investors, a lot of people are analyzing deals just through Airbnb, and ultimately, if the numbers only make sense through Airbnb, I don't recommend it, because if it's part of an HOA, that can change any day. Also, Airbnb is heavily seasonal, and it's a lot of management as well. So unless you're hiring a management company that charges 20 to 30%, you're going to get worn out on it.
No, I will even say from a loan perspective, like we won't even use short-term income to qualify you for a loan, or if you're trying to buy an investment loan and you only have short-term history, like we can't even use that to offset.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to have at least 2 years of it. So
Gotcha.
yeah, from this perspective of actually qualifying, it's a little different if you are just looking to do that short-term Airbnb.
Yeah.
Not impossible, just a
makes
little
sense.
more to it.
One other thing that I heard, when was it? Yesterday, I think. Warren Buffett actually projects 7 rate drops in 2023.
Fed
Did you
rate
hear
drops?
that? Yeah, Fed rate
Wow.
drops.
Okay. No, I didn't.
Yeah,
Where'd
Yeah.
that bold prediction come from?
Warren Buffett.
Yeah.
I don't know. That scares me a little bit, because like how I see that is, if they're dropping that much, that means the economy is doing terrible.
Yeah.
And we're in a deep recession.
That's a
So,
lot.
like,
Yeah. A little
I don't know
concerning.
what the rhyme or reason
I
is.
don't know. I feel like it's so hard living in Charlotte and being so like insulated compared to like what the rest of the country's doing, that I guess I just don't necessarily see that being the case.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. What
I feel like 3, 4 is reasonable.
Yeah.
I think once you get to 7, that's a lot.
Yeah.
We'll see.
But I
Super successful businessman. You might know what he's talking about. Yeah.
well, right. I know. How do you argue against Warren Buffett?
Yeah.
But I guess wrapping it up, because I know that we kind of spoke quite a bit today
Yeah.
about a lot of different things, and we'll probably compartmentalize it all and
Do short, like little spin-off segments for
but
different topics.
I
Yeah.
guess if you're a buyer or seller, where do you suggest people go for like up to date information on what's happening in the local market, the economy, like overall, like keeping up with interest rates? Where would you go?
Yeah, so I would say, as far like from a seller's perspective, like your agent's going to be your number one go-to for getting information. So that's going to be places like Realtor.com. Even Zillow has some cool resources too. But also, like, I have access to comps from like all the closings. So like I can pull a desktop appraisal on a property without even needing to send an appraiser out there. So if you'd be like, hey, I've got this listing coming up, I can shoot that over to you. No problem. And it's going to show this just sold, this just sold, this just sold. I think a lot of times people see, oh, that house went for crazy over. And it's like, okay, well, that was one out of the whole neighborhood. You're not necessarily going to get 100,000 over asking just because your neighbor did, because they had this cool upgrade or something. Yeah.
And remember, list price doesn't mean anything.
It does not.
It could be listed below market value. It could be listed above market value.
I mean, that one that we looked at over, it was in Plaza. It was that one where it was like listed at 350, sold for like 500 or something.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So like list price is really it's really all about the perceived value from the buyers. So I would say list price is a little harder. Buyers, I know you said you recommend the Mortgage Daily as far as interest rates.
Yeah.
I would say that's fairly accurate for people with good credit. Once you get into a little more credit challenged, it's not necessarily accurate. So it's always important to talk to an actual professional, get a full rundown.
For sure.
Because sometimes there are things that, hey, you might not, we can approve you right now, but it might be better for us to wait 3 months, fix XYZ, and then you're in a much better position overall.
Yeah.
So definitely talking to your local experts is 100% the place to start.
Yeah, no, makes sense. Well, again, appreciate you guys. If you liked kind of what we were saying or didn't like it at all, let us know.
Let me know.
Right.
Yeah.
Comment, like the video, do whatever you need to do to get this out there. We're going to try to do this
Pretty regularly. Yeah, for sure.
maybe once a month.
Yeah.
At least,
Yeah.
probably. But yeah, whatever you can do to help us out, it's greatly appreciated. And sorry if we bored you to death, but we'll give
I'll make
give
them
you
say
back
less numbers next time.
Yeah, I'll give you back the rest of your day. All right, guys.
Thanks, Cameron.
Yeah, thanks.